All right, we are live with Alex Smith from Horace Mann. We are so excited to offer this collaboration, discussion, conversation to hopefully set up Rhode Island educators specifically for financial success moving forward. If you are new here, my name is Erin, and I'm the founder of the Young Educators Society of Rhode Island. We are a social networking and professional development community of teachers generally between pre-service years and year 5 in the profession. And we specifically work with Rhode Island educators to support the profession and help them succeed in their classrooms. And we are super excited again today to partner with Alex Smith, talk a little bit about finances, which as an English teacher, not super comfortable or familiar with. It's not my really wheelhouse, but Alex, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Hi, yes, I'm happy to be here. My name is Alex Smith. I actually come from an education background. So back in another life, I was a physics educator, and I did my graduate work actually in physics education research. So learning how people learn the subject. And I've been working with Horace Mann for about 7 years now, and Horace Mann is a financial services company specifically for educators. There's a couple of math teachers that founded our company over 75 years ago. So that's what really attracted me to it, because I get to still stay in the education space, but I get to work with people more one-on-one instead of 1-on-25. So it's a good fit for me. Yeah, that's what we do, and that's what I do. I have to say one thing up front. I'm not going to get too much into any details about Horace Mann specifics and products and stuff like that. This is more for general education with, with our experience working with employees of school districts. But, personally for me, I own the East Greenwich, Rhode Island office, and over 90% of my clients work in Southern Rhode Island public school districts. So this is completely our swim lane, and we've seen a lot of the common obstacles and opportunities for educators. And today, Erin, you've invited me to talk more about the opportunities sides of things.
Yeah, I was talking to Alex over the summer and about how just like it's been my goal to get my finances in order for the last however long I've been in the classroom. And we finally sat down and did it this summer, and I was super, super grateful. So I'm really excited to share some of these awesome opportunities with everybody. There's a lot of different ways you can think about this topic, but primarily because we service young educators and early career educators, getting right out of college, dealing with student loans is a really big burden for new teachers. So the first topic that we're going to talk about today is student loans. And I know I started setting some stuff up a while ago, but as of the last week, there's been some big changes. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex, who's been filling me in real time about all this information.
So educating folks on their student loan forgiveness options has been a top priority of how, I choose to spend my day for about 7 years now. And the reason that it's so important for me is that I work with a lot of, young teachers, young administrators who are delaying a lot of life plans because they still have their student loan debt. So personally for me, I didn't save a penny in a 401k or for an emergency fund or anything until I knocked out my student loans. So I lived on beans and rice and threw every extra $100 I had towards my student loan debt because I felt like it had to be done first. And so, I was very fortunate to only have $15,000 in debt, but, the average undergraduate has close to $38,000 in debt. And if you're a public school teacher, you need a master's degree. And then that adds more debt on top of that. And so it's not something that people knock out in their 20s anymore, but it is the thing that keeps people from buying a house and starting a family and saving for retirement and moving out from their parents' place and other things that would allow someone to be more financially independent. And what's really great about some of the student loan forgiveness programs that are out there for educators are that by finding an efficient path towards forgiveness with an end date, it frees people up to start focusing on other things that they feel like they've been putting off for too long. So anytime I'm sitting with someone, it's about finding for them the most efficient path forward. And that path might be forgiveness. If you don't qualify for anything, it might be refinancing at a lower rate. Or it might be not doing anything at all. There's really no way to improve someone's situation. But no matter what, that person then gets to go to bed without thinking, is there more that I could be doing? Gosh, I keep hearing these rumblings of other folks who are getting their student loans forgiven, but then other people say it's too complicated and it's too much work, and it really just scares me off the whole thing. And then you live with that uncertainty. And that's no way to live. That's not a good way to go to bed every night. That's not a good way to think about your own financial future. And so it's important to review what's out there so that you can tell yourself, I'm doing everything I can possibly do about this. So there are many different ways that we've worked with educators on it. And the biggest news that I'm going to speak about today is the news from October 6th, when the Department of Education announced the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Limited Waiver Opportunity. But before I get into that, I want to talk about how the landscape of student loan forgiveness has changed in even just the past 5 years. So there are several different programs that teachers qualify for. You may qualify for public service loan forgiveness, where you get your debt eliminated after 10 years in a school. You may qualify for teacher loan forgiveness, where you have a certain amount of your debt forgiven after 5 years in a low-income school. You may be looking at teacher loan cancellation, which is a little bit different, which is just for Perkins loan debt, where for 5 years in a certain school or a high-need subject area, you can knock off your Perkins loan debt bit by bit. Everyone's personal debt situation is completely unique and different, but there are a lot of these programs out there. So one of the programs that we worked with people on was teacher loan forgiveness. A lot of people know it as the Title I loan forgiveness program, where you need to be in a Title I school to qualify for this. It's not quite Title I. As we all know, Title I means 20 different things, depending on the conversation that you're using that phrase in. For the purposes of this program, it means at least 30% of the student body needs to qualify for free or reduced lunch. So one of the things that I noticed with my office when I started working with Rhode Island teachers is that there are many schools that meet that 30% threshold that were not included on the state's directory of schools that qualify for the program that the Rhode Island Department of Education maintains. So I was actually able to work with RIDE on redoing that entire directory and adding new schools that have otherwise never qualified for this low-income program that now qualify for it. We actually were able to add over 50 schools. It expanded the list of eligible schools in the state by over 20%, and it affected over 2,000 teachers across the state. I'm really happy we're here because we are only just barely starting to get the word out about it. We even found schools in, Cheraho, where I met you, Miss Healey. So that's been very exciting, but that's one of those things where you may have heard, oh, we don't qualify here. You might as well just give up. It's not, don't even go down that road. I've been down that road. It's painful. It's not worth it. Stuff has changed. That's Rhode Island's corner of things changing. Let's talk about the whole national things changing with this public service loan forgiveness limited waiver opportunity. I'm so jazzed about this.
I am too. I can't wait. I just got to get some paperwork done, and hopefully I can be part of this program as well.
So I like telling a narrative. I come from a theater background, right? I like building to a point, and I've really learned that I can't bury the lead like this. Here's what the limited waiver opportunity means for everyone. If you've been a full-time employee, not just a teacher, an employee of any public school district for at least 10 years, and you still have student loan debt, you probably qualify for immediate and full loan forgiveness right now.
Awesome.
That wasn't the case. It's crazy. It's fantastic. You know what they're doing? I mean, it's not new. They're fixing their program from 2007. So in 2007, legislation was passed that created an entirely new student loan program. People used to have old FFEL programs. There was that Perkins loan program that I talked about. They used to be called Stafford loans when we were really little, but now they're called direct loans. And direct loans have baked into them public service loan forgiveness. If you make 10 years of qualified payments while full-time in public service, then they'll forgive all the rest of your your federal student loans. And it's those qualified payments that got the change last week. It used to be qualified payments were on an income-driven repayment plan. It used to be any payments on loans that weren't direct didn't count. So if any of us went to school in the 90s or the early 2000s, we had FFEL loans. And those FFEL loans aren't direct loans, so they don't qualify for public service loan forgiveness. They're going to go back and count them now. It also used to be that if you consolidated your loan, the act of that is paying off old debt and introducing new debt. And because you had to look at 10 years of payments on your debt, you started your new 10-year clock. No, they're going back. They're going back and looking at any payments that people made before they consolidated. It's fantastic. So not only that, okay, because public service loan forgiveness started in 2007, they're only looking at time from 2007 to now. And you need 120 months of payments simultaneous with your service to get that forgiveness. If you submit the paperwork where they match up your payments, the camera figuring out. So for every payment that you make and for every month that you have your qualified service, they need to match them up. And this action of matching them up is using what's called a public service loan forgiveness form, or a PSLF form. And so when they match up these payments with your service using these forms, once they get to 120, all your debt's forgiven. Right now, for a limited time, if they go back and they find more than 120, they'll refund you.
That's
nuts.
Amazing.
It's nuts.
I hope some teachers with more than 5 years experience are watching this webinar, which I know they are. So hopefully they're hopping right on.
Right. I know. It's too bad we're not doing this for the Middle-Aged Educators Society, but
I don't think that exists in Rhode Island yet.
No, I don't think it does. But even for young educators who didn't know about the program right when they graduated, oh my God, your first 5 years, you've got observations and you've got all your lesson plans that you're putting together, and you're maybe working a second job because your pay isn't as right. And so you've got all of these situations that get in the way of sitting down and reviewing your financial strategy, right? But what these changes have meant is that maybe you're not starting your 10 years from scratch right now. Maybe if you submit this PSLF form, you'll find you're already 7 years in. And so not only is it going to make forgiveness immediate for a lot of folks, for younger teachers, it's going to move the goalposts closer to you. And the way that you can verify that is having these forms filled out. You can access this stuff online. We have ways to do it at Horace Mann electronically. If you have more questions about it, you can follow up with me. This stuff may be specific district by district. In general, though, you fill out these forms and you send them to your HR director. But when you send them in, don't take no for an answer. Ask more questions. Gosh, it is so easy to get disheartened when you get any pushback about these programs. I have two numbers for you, 2 and 80. 2% of all applicants, according to the National Department of Education for Public Service Loan Forgiveness, who submit these forms, they're rejected. So 2% are accepted. Sorry, 98% of these applicants are rejected.
Oh, yikes.
80% of these rejections could have been overcome with some preparation and planning. Half of the rejections, someone filled out the paperwork wrong. Someone checked off the wrong box. I pity the HR directors that have to fill this out, because they are wading through a sea of double negatives when they are filling out this form. It is not user-friendly, like most of these student loan forgiveness programs. But what that means is, if that didn't get accepted, you might get a letter. And that letter might say that you don't qualify. The letter might not say you would qualify if you filled out the paperwork a little differently. So it's important to look at that and look at it in just a little bit more detail, and to reach out to anyone that you may trust on this matter, with any rejection letters, because most of the time when we see paperwork get bounced back, it's we just got to submit it again and do something different. I have had forgiveness applications, like with the teacher loan forgiveness program, rejected because someone didn't put the date as 10/12-2021. They did 10/12/21, and it's like, no, you need to put it in that format. But they send you the letter, you don't qualify. No, you need to fill out the date differently, and then you qualify. So persistence is important, and double checking all this paperwork is important too. Last thing I really want to bring up, or not the last, but the next thing I want to bring up, is the limited part of this limited waiver opportunity. The only reason that these rule changes have existed is due to a special power given to the Secretary of Education under what's called the HEROES Act, which allows the Secretary of Education, in a time of national crisis, to change this program within certain parameters. So that's what they've done, is they've changed what it means to have a qualifying payment. But because it's a temporary measure, that special provision runs out next October. So you have to do it now. You have to send in these public service loan forgiveness forms. If you had old FFEL loans, you have to consolidate your loans into that direct loan program that has the public service loan forgiveness baked in. And if you don't do it by next October, you'll miss the boat. So as much as we love at Horace Mann taking things off people's plates and not adding to it, this is something that I would budget into your schedule if you have any student loan debt, because it is a limited opportunity.
I have so many thoughts going through my head.
I'll bet.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I really appreciated your point about being persistent and not taking no for an answer. Just to jump back to that, because primarily the audience that we do serve is in that like 0 to 5 years of experience range. So they might not be immediately qualifying for loan forgiveness, but
no.
It's really hard for newer teachers to advocate for themselves, and can be really nerve-wracking, can be really scary. But don't forget, something that new teachers are expected to do and should be really good at are asking lots of questions. So if you are listening to this and you're thinking like, I don't know XYZ, I am not sure who to ask, just start asking people in your school or your district. Go talk to your HR advisor. Begin starting the process of just asking questions, and then through that process, if you get you don't qualify, go ask more questions. If
why
you're coming at yeah, why don't I qualify?
Point to the paperwork where it says I don't qualify. What is that rule?
And if they don't have an answer, go keep asking questions.
Yeah.
You have to be your biggest advocate when it comes to your finances, because no one's going to do it for you. And that being said, for all the people who do qualify, who are your 10 or plus in the profession, go fill out that paperwork. Go talk to your HR person. Go talk to Alex. Go find the paperwork. And do it now, please. Set your alarm like next, June 21st, whatever the Monday is, right? The last first day of summer. Sit down, do this. Like if you need to put it off your plate for a while, just try to get it done fast.
So an emphasis on financial education, and especially on the student loan crisis that often, plagues America's educators. It's not just me in East Greenwich with Horace Mann. It's a national priority. I only started digging into it because I was actually at an agent conference with a lot of my colleagues, and a gentleman who was an agent in California at the time stood up in front of like 100 of us with a microphone and said, "Hey, y'all need to learn about these loan forgiveness programs because it affects everybody." And so there's a lot of collaboration, but every single student or teacher in our state has a Horace Mann agent that's assigned to your school. So you can look that up through our website at horacemann.com. And so if for some reason it isn't me, but it's somebody else, then we can still help you. Or, you've got my Twitter right here. You can reach out to us. We can point you in the right direction. That works too.
Yes, and thank you so much. It's being a teacher is like a 25/7 job. And this is just, one incredible way that you can help take some of that stress off of teachers' plates and off of even like admin and HR. They have so much going on. Like, should they be sharing this with teachers? Maybe, but if they're not, asking the questions to get that ball rolling is just so important.
Yeah, it's difficult to, I would say it's difficult for any admin, union leader, mentor to talk about things, especially money wise, if they don't feel like an expert. And so, because why would anyone want to put themselves in that situation? They might be giving out bad advice. So I think that there may be more opportunities out there than folks may be getting in certain announcements, just because in my experience, folks are hesitant about talking about these programs if they're not able to answer questions about them.
And let's be honest, this has kind of had a bad rap up until like this past week. So
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
yeah.
Oh, and a lot of the press around loan forgiveness programs has been misleading as well, too, when they talk about these programs going away and stuff, right? Did it? No, it actually got better. Another thing to point out is there are a lot of bad actors that prey on the misinformation around this. So if any of you have student loan debt, I know you've gotten them. You've gotten Facebook ads and the text messages and the calls about signing up for this and consolidating your debt and refinancing it and work with us to manage your payments. So another thing, you don't need to pay for any of this stuff. All right. So the Department of Ed puts it big letters right on their website. Nobody needs to pay for advice on how to manage their student loan debt. So if anyone is charging you anything to answer questions about this, with 100%, they are predatory and they are not looking out for your best interests. These are federal benefits that you are entitled to. You just need to find out how to get them. It is not some special thing that you pay somebody else for. And then some folks can get misled and they might refinance their debt privately and permanently disqualify themselves. So be vigilant as well, too, with the information that comes out about it. And the articles that you may read in the paper certainly like to talk about people that don't qualify. But if they're not talking about how you can be qualified, how you can take action, then they're just looking for clicks, right? They're just telling a story, and that's dramatic because these programs are possible.
Which is amazing, and which is, I hope, something that takes a little bit of the stress off teachers' backs as they continue in this very hard 2-year process. Something else that is it constantly weighed on my mind when I started off my teaching career, and again, only really got this stuff settled out year 6 in the profession. So I'm not the best model here. But when teachers get hired in a new school district and they meet with their HR director for the very first time, it's a really overwhelming process. And they're handing you a bunch of paperwork about health insurance for the first time and retirement. And weirdly enough, I learned this summer, every school district in Rhode Island is a little bit different with how they handle pension and Social Security and all that stuff.
Yep.
It can be very, very overwhelming for a lot of new teachers. And so if you're like me, you put all the paperwork and all the mailing you get from the HR retirement people and just put it in a folder and then save it for 5 years and then show up at Alex's office with a coffee stained mess of trash that we ended up just throwing out anyway. So that was my experience. None of this is important. Just throw it out. Yeah. So could you possibly do me and every other new teacher out there a favor and explain a little bit about some of that retirement pension stuff? We are ready to go with our student loan forgiveness, but we also want to retire one day. Help us do that.
All right. So first, to kind of bridge the two things is, especially when we look at student loans, often figuring out how to tackle it is a holistic effort. So if you're trying to work towards public service loan forgiveness, where you make payments based on your income, if you make more money, you make higher payments. They're going to forgive whatever's left over anyway. Setting aside money in a retirement account can sometimes lower your income because you defer it for later. And then that can in turn lower your monthly student loan payments and actually maximize your forgiveness while still building a retirement nest egg at the same time. So we're going to move over to retirement, but there's even a bridge in those strategies as well. So look, I want to talk about very basic structure as to how the retirement system in Rhode Island works. I'm not the ERSRI. If you have any questions about your years of service and benefits and things like that, you can reach out to them. They're wonderful people. I love working with them anytime I need to give them a call. But I'm going to focus on just the general structure. I want to focus on some common myths and bad information that you may hear about your retirement system. But we're not going to go into really heavy detail as to the nitty gritty of, how much am I getting and when am I getting it, things like that. And the reason is because the rules that apply to you are different than the rules that apply to your mentors and the rules that apply to folks who were hired in the 80s. So if you were to go onto the ERSRI website and look up the information on there and try to understand your pension system, maybe if this was a pie chart, maybe about this much of it would apply to any one person listening here, right? And so you have to figure out, how do I ignore the other 75% that doesn't apply to me? Well, what I'm going to talk about now applies to everybody. So the first thing is that everybody with the ERSRI system, the Employees Retirement System of Rhode Island, is in a hybrid retirement benefit plan. So a hybrid plan simply means that it's in two pieces. It has a pension, which is sometimes called a defined benefit plan, and it has a savings account, which is sometimes called a defined contribution plan. So a defined benefit plan, when you collect it, is a benefit. It's a steady monthly paycheck that starts later and lasts the rest of your life. So that's a pension, and you will get that pension paycheck after you retire, whether you live for another 2 years or 42 years. You'll get it constantly. Defined contribution plans, and all of the public educators in Rhode Island have that plan with a company called TIAA. Hey, side note, very similar to Horace Mann. The TI and TIAA stands for Teachers Insurance. A lot of companies started by focusing on working with educators. They just happened to focus more on higher ed, and Horace Mann happened to focus more on K through 12. So that's a little bit of the history there. But that's your defined contribution plan. And one way to look at it is a bucket of money with the state of Rhode Island. And so when you retire, you might have $250,000 in that bucket. And then it's up to you whether or not, oh, you made a face, Erin. $250,000 is not going to be a lot of money when you retire. It's a lot of
But
money
as a
now.
young teacher right now, it's like, yes, sign me
Right,
up.
right, exactly. Okay. So you might have $250,000 in there. And so when you retire, you can pull out 10 grand, and then you can just let it sit there for 6 years if you want to. And then you can pull out $40 a month, whatever you want. But when that bucket is empty, it's gone. So one of the reasons why the state moved to this hybrid plan back in 2012, this was the Rhode Island Retirement Security Act, RIRSA. So every once in a while, you might hear some of your colleagues talk about, when RIRSA happened. That's what they're referring to. The hybrid plan allows you to make strides towards achieving different goals. One is guaranteed income for life. This is a paycheck in retirement that you'll never outlive. That's the pension. The other is an investment account invested in the stock market. Historically, investments in that manner have outpaced inflation. Historically, pensions have not. So when we talk about inflation, we're talking about things getting more expensive over time, right? And so your bills are going to go up in retirement over a 30-year 30 years ago, many of us didn't have cell phone bills, right? So what are some new bills that you're going to have late in retirement that you didn't even know about when you were in your early 60s? And so having both of these pieces allows someone to have some protection against outliving their money and some protection against things getting really expensive in their retirement. And so if you've ever heard the tale of the woman on a fixed income, imagine the old lady at the beginning of the Incredibles movie, okay? You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, all right.
Classic movie.
You may have heard of the cost of living adjustments on the Rhode Island state pension that used to happen every year where everybody got a little bit of a raise. Walk that back. They only happen every 4 years. And so that might not still be the case by the time you retire, but that's just an example of where a pension alone has difficulty keeping pace with the rising cost of living, and having a different piece allows someone to not be worried about those I'm on a fixed income problems that someone who just has, that type of paycheck may be worried about. So some common myths that oftentimes people hear is, or that I hear, is I have to work until my late 60s. No, you don't. You can. My personal philosophy is you can retire whenever you want to, as long as you plan for it. Okay. However, a lot of people also think that because they think they have to work until 70 before they can collect their pension anyway. No. Right now, the way the rules are now, worst case, age 67, your Social Security normal retirement age. But under the rule of 95, you might be able to collect your pension as early as age 62. Let's do a little bit of a math lesson. The way the rule of 95 works is it says if you put in enough of a career, we'll let you collect your pension a little bit early with no penalties. Earliest would be age 62. But to do that, your age plus your years of service needs to equal 95 or higher. So if you're 62, you would need 33 years of service to satisfy that rule of 95. Well, if you have 33 years of service by the time you're 62, when did you need to start? By the time you were 29. So really what it is if you started teaching in your 20s, you're out at 62. Don't need to do much more math than that for a lot of folks, provided they put in a full career. And so oftentimes when we're talking with people about when they can expect to collect their pension, a little bit sooner than they might have feared. Another myth, buying back time isn't worth it. You may often hear that from your colleagues. So buying back time when you build time in the pension system, it builds benefits to you. So the more time you have, the bigger pension, the bigger monthly paycheck you'll get later. The more time you have, possibly with this rule of 95, it might even allow you to get out sooner, maybe. And so you can have time by working. This is called earned time. Or you can have time by purchasing. This is called bought time. And there's a lot of different times that you can purchase in Rhode Island. You can purchase substitute teaching time. You can purchase out-of-state teaching time. You can purchase private school teaching time. You can purchase an official leave of absence. So if you take 2 years off to raise your children when they're babies and then you come back, you can buy back that time. So there's a military service time you can buy back. So there's a lot of different time you can purchase. But RRSA, the Rhode Island Retirement Security Act of 2012, put a deadline on it. And that's 3 years. But it starts 1 year after you enter the retirement service. So technically it's 4 years. But what that means is if you don't make that decision to purchase that time within that 3-year window, you'll never, ever, ever, ever be allowed to do it again. And so now, if you come from out of state or if you subbed for a couple years before you found a full position, I'm sorry, Erin, you can't put this in your let's look at it in 5 years pile. You have to look at it. You have to look at it sooner. And that's something that, your HR director or your, union rep can work with you on it. We help people with the paperwork as well too. But the reason why a lot of people say it's not worth it is because back in 2012, when this 3-year clock was put in there, there was a race. Everyone was racing to buy back all this time, right? From when they subbed in 1991, because they know they're never going to be able to do it again. It's just that then they got a bill for how much it's going to cost them to buy back that time, and there was interest calculated because the state would have liked that money 20 years ago when you subbed and not today. So everyone got all these exorbitant bills for the old purchase time that they were trying to get. Nobody wanted to pay them, and then it became the common language. Don't try to buy back time. It's not worth it. And it's been that way for about 9 years now. So sometimes it isn't worth it, but it's always worth investigating, because when you put in the paperwork for it, you'll get a letter back from the state that says, all right, Mr. Teacher, you can buy back X number of years for Y number of dollars. What do you want to do? And then you can make a decision. Then you can sit down and do some math. And so it's certainly worth investigating. Again, calling the state or talking with, any financial folks that you trust about it is a good idea for that.
Asking questions, new teachers. We have a lot of people who come from out of state or come from long-term subbing or private school sector, because that's where people find a lot of jobs right out of college. So just ask questions, get answers, and make a smart decision.
Exactly. Yes. So the last common myth that I hear from people is it's too early for me to do anything about my retirement. You know what I also hear? It's too late for me to do anything about my retirement. Everyone says it. It's not. All right. So the sooner you start, the more time your money has to grow. And that's great, right? So if you consider the example of a teacher who sets a certain amount of money aside per paycheck between the years 25 to 35, all right? So she starts setting some extra money aside right when she gets hired. She does it for 10 years, and then, I don't know, Erin, life, she stops, okay? And let's call it, I don't know, let's just call it $100 per paycheck, but the math works out no matter what we say. And then let's look at that money. She set it aside for 10 years. It grows, compound interest, until she's 65. Now, compare that to another teacher who sets aside the same amount of money per paycheck, say $100 a paycheck, starting at age 40. And she does it for the rest of her career. So she sets aside more money because she sets it aside for 25 years compared to the younger teacher who only set it aside for 10. Who has more money when they're 65?
It's going to be the younger teacher.
The younger teacher.
I hope, because I said that very confidently.
Yeah, the younger teacher. Well, it's a stupid riddle if it's the other way around,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's the younger teacher. And it's just, it doesn't feel like it now. Another way that's helped me visualize it is, when money is invested, it grows as a percentage, right? And so something might grow 6% one year, or something might do really well and grow 10%, right? And so the more years you have, the more these percents add upon each other and your money grows. So if you have $1,000, then it needs to grow 100 times to get to $100,000. Okay. If you have $100,000, it needs to grow 10 times to get to $1 million. The scale of that seems weird in my head, but the sooner you can just dump money into an account and the more time it has to grow, there's such a large difference in what people retire with than if they just try dumping it all at the end. Not to say that for folks who start late, there's nothing they can do about it. They can, but they're probably not going to be listening to this particular call.
We do serve mostly younger beginning teachers, so that does help getting the word out early. And I will say, it's incredibly overwhelming. They hand you a gigantic list of providers that you could work with. And I personally looked at it as I don't have the time to sit down and do my due diligence in this. And I know that you can't technically legally say this, but working with a company that was founded and so specifically supports educators, to me, was a huge comfort factor. And being able to have these discussions and stuff with you as a representative of Horace Mann, and also just as you as a friend, was very helpful. Making those kind of decisions right off the bat.
I greatly appreciate that, Erin. Thank you very much. But there's actually been studies for that, right? Studies have shown that folks who work with a representative or advisor that they trust and they meet with regularly just tend to have more money at the end of their career than folks that don't. And a lot of it has to do with the accountability factor, the accountability of having someone call you up and bug you about your strategy. Because I don't wake up personally and think about what I need to do for me 20 years from now. It's nice when that's somebody else's job. But it doesn't need to be me. It doesn't need to be Horace Mann. I believe that as long as you are regularly, asking these questions and meeting with somebody who brings you confidence about your strategy, that itself is important. One of the core principles of the business that I own is that everybody deserves a better night's sleep. And when we're meeting with folks about retirement strategy, that's really the big part of it, because we've met with so many just stressed out 50-year-old teachers who think, I'm never going to retire. I'm never going to be fine. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I can't even think about it. I just know it's going to be horrible. That's no way to live your life. Jeez. And a lot of people think about their retirement strategy that way, right? How much nicer would it be to go to bed every night if you get those intrusive thoughts about your future and you think, I looked at that 6 months ago, I have a plan, right? Or I've reviewed this regularly. I've built good habits around this. And even that alone is going to help me avoid any pitfalls or obstacles that might come up in the future. So if it's the type of thing that causes you any anxiety or stress, it doesn't have to be that way. And it shouldn't be that way. Financial security is really important and you deserve it. And if talking to somebody about it can bring that financial security, no matter who it is, have those conversations because you deserve that better night's sleep. All right,
Yeah, and
that's my
I know.
philosophy.
Yeah, no, I know we're coming to the end of the webinar, but I will say, like, I think I think I sent about like one Zoom call and like two meetings in your office, and 5 years of stress of looking at that pile of paperwork that was slowly growing in my desk, and just being like, I don't have any clue where to start. And with like the student loans and with retirement and stuff, and it's just like a huge weight was lifted off my back that I didn't really know was there. Like I recognized that it was stressing me out because again, I just was watching the pile of mailing paperwork grow. Um, but it was so much easier than I thought it was going to be too. Um, and
I'm
in
really
a
happy to hear
year,
that.
yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. In a year where everything just seems like it's just so much and it's too much and every little thing is adding stress, like this is a really easy way to take some of that stress off your plate, to like free up some of your brain space to just focus on teaching post-ish, kind of in the middle of a pandemic. It it definitely helped me feel like, okay, I can breathe a little bit easier, I can sleep a little bit better because I know that at least like I have done the thing to set me up for success down the road. I'm like working towards this, and I don't need that. That does not have to be something that's on my list of things to worry about. Because let's be honest, there's enough of other things to be on that list that are probably more important to like the short term. So
Yeah, yeah. So that's very well. That's very validating for my choice of career to hear that. So I really appreciate it. Um, so look, I know you're asking me questions, but I have a question for you. You know, is there an example of teachers saying something similar to you about the support that you've provided through YesRI, where they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't need to reinvent the wheel on XYZ," or this was here for me when I was stressed out. What's an example where you've had that type of feedback?
we got a lot of responses from, we did a really big push for virtual teaching resources like that spring 2020. The community really banded together and we had so many people sharing like guest blog posts and resources. And we had, I was one of them, but we had a couple different people who were doing the virtual teaching hotline too. Really banding together in times of crisis seems to be our MO. I hope it doesn't continue.
Yeah, I like
But
that.
yeah, and a lot of the stuff we do around evaluations too can has been really helpful for a lot of people. Um, is it, to me, it's really important as a teacher to have a community of people who can not only just like support you when you're down, but also like lift you up higher. And that can take the form of practicing educators, admin, support professionals, colleagues, friends, groups, organizations such as Horace Mann, for example, um, really coming together to boost the profession that like, also doesn't really have a super great rap a lot of the time. And it's really hard to be a teacher. It's really hard to stay a teacher, especially for beginning educators who are struggling with student loans and finances and living with their parents or trying to find a roommate because a first year teacher salary is not that much, or trying to
Yeah.
get a car on campus to drive to student teaching placements. Like it's just the financial stress of being an educator is something that I personally have struggled with. And if we can start to like share resources and in this community that we've built, hopefully that will set other people up for success as well.
All right. Terrific. Well,
Yeah.
there's certainly a lot of overlap
Yeah,
in our philosophies on it for sure.
absolutely. Well, we did not get any questions in the chat, But I want to give you a couple minutes to share some exciting opportunities or events that you have coming up for some educators before we wrap. And if anybody who is watching live has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll save some time to answer them at the end, or we will follow up with you personally.
Okay, yeah. So, one of the things that I do look, I own a business, right? But that's actually what I like about my setup with Horace Mann is that I'm not an employee of Horace Mann. I'm self-employed, and so I get to do a lot of things without necessarily needing to ask a ton of permission all the time. And so one of those ways is to be able to give back to the community that that I serve out of my office. And so we found that we were able to. So one of the things that I tried spring of 2020, right when COVID was happening, was how do I connect with people, at least just to remind folks that we're here to help, but also how do I support educators during a really difficult, turbulent time? Not to mention everything else that the country wanted to do, like supporting local business and stuff like that. So what we did was we just went out, we just bought a whole bunch of ice cream gift certificates to little ice cream shops, that were local to every single school district that we worked with, and then we made those $5 gift certificates available for teachers to reserve, and then we bring it by their school, that they could then use for participation incentives or most improved incentives, really any type of initiative that they already had in place. We're able to provide some sort of additional lift to it. And I enjoyed that process so much that one of the things that I've started doing this year out of my office is I've started hosting monthly educator giveaways. So last month it was $100 gift certificates to coastal restaurants, right? And so a few teachers in Southern Rhode Island got gift certificates to, the bistro at the Ocean House in Westerly or the Coast Guard House in Narragansett. This next month, it's going to be something more for students. So I'm getting gift certificates from Barrington Books and POW Science and Wakefield that teachers can use for any sort of incentives for their classrooms. And then in November, I'll probably do something more for teachers. At some point, I'll do like a spa day or something. I do have to kind of limit it to Southern Rhode Island, Kent, and Washington counties. So if you're watching this in Newport or Providence, I love you. You're great. And I can point you in the right direction of other folks who support those schools. But that's something that I'm bringing up, because if you are in some of these, more coastal areas, that is something that we're going to be doing, and it's going to be rotating all year long. And we'll be posting it at our Twitter. So if you see below, we've got @HoraceMann_RI. That's my office. And it also includes outreach about the monthly webinars that we're hosting on the state retirement system and student loan forgiveness programs and any other topics that may come up. So that's some stuff that I have coming up. And hey, if you see me coming by your school, please give me a warm hello, because I'm very happy to be there. I've been out of the ecosystem for a year and a half, and it's driven me a little bit nuts. I like nothing more than sitting down with a kindergarten teacher in a very, very, very small chair with my very, very, very long legs, because it makes me feel like I'm helping the people I need to be helping. So give me a wave, give me a hello when you see me come by.
I just shared your website and your Twitter handle in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Too.
Excellent.
So if people want to learn more, they can always jump on there that way. And I think you have a webinar tonight, right?
Yes. So I have a student loan webinar that I'm hosting tonight. Next week, I'm speaking to the Rhode Island Association of School Principals on mostly student loan stuff, because I'm trying to get some, advocates, at each school. The week after that, I'm doing webinars on student loans again. I booked a whole bunch this month because of the news last week, and on the state retirement system, where I'm going to go in a lot more detail than what I went over this afternoon.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And thank you so much for taking some time this afternoon to share with us some of the preview information before you share it in your webinar later tonight. So Thank you to everybody who joined our stream, and thank you so much to Alex for sharing all of his insight. And I really hope that a lot of the tools, tips, and tricks that he shared here will help you rest a little bit easier at night and take some of that stress off your plate when it comes to your finances for planning for the short term with student loan forgiveness and planning for the long term with your retirement and pension plans. So thank you so much, Alex. And if you have any questions, please again feel free to comment in the recording of the video, and we will reach back out independently. You can follow us at YesRI.org on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can find Alex at HoraceMann_RI on Twitter or at goldstarri.com. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you to all of you for what you do for our community. Thank you so much.